Special one.
Morning, everyone. Welcome to the Environment Overview and Scrutiny Committee for today, Tuesday the 28th of September. I'd like to start the agenda. So, have we got any comments from members of the public that we know of?
We haven't received any comments from members of the public, Chairman. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. Agenda item 2, any apologies for absence?
We have received apologies from Councillor John Cottier. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, can I be a pain? Can someone shut the door? Agenda item 3, disclosure of interest. Members are asked to disclose any interest in matters for consideration in the meeting. You can do that now, or you can do it as the matters arise. Thank you. Agenda item 4, action notes from the meeting held on the 8th of June 2021. Any comments? I think there's only me and Councillor Johnson present. Any comments?
No.
Lovely. We'll pass on. Agenda item 5, any updates from the previous meeting? It's okay. No updates, lovely. Right, agenda item 6, update on the tree planning ambitions. If I can hand over to Dr. Peter Mosley, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman, and thank you for accepting me into your meeting again this month. And I'm delighted to bring forward, it is actually probably an update from the last meeting, because this is something we discussed back then. And I believe we agreed to go away and have a look and see what we could do to promote tree planting with some projects on district council land throughout the districts. And so what you have before you is that, plus also an update and summary on some of the work that the district council's been doing in collaboration with the county council in terms of bids. So you'll see the recommendations on page 11, which is to note the progress and the positive progress and the opportunity to work with Lincolnshire County Council to increase the speed and scale of tree planting across the county. To note the ongoing work with the Woodland Trust and continued opportunities to work jointly, including reviewing grant funding opportunities. And then to consider the 4 outlined options for the establishment of new trees on council managed open spaces, whether these should be recommended to Cabinet and how these should be funded, subject to consultation with local stakeholders. We do need to note the limited space that South Stephen District Council has to develop additional tree planting on amenity spaces. SKDC doesn't have that much land, so we've got to be careful about how we pick that out. To endorse the enhancement of the tree replacement approach for council managed trees, to plant at least 2 trees for any trees that need to be removed. And when I say need to be removed, I really do mean need. Then this is if they're dangerous and they pose a risk to the public, etc. Then to explore the best models for future long-term stewardship of the trees and landscaping within large-scale developments. So the report's there in front of you, obviously, to go through in detail. I did want to just go, if you don't mind, straight to the appendix, because I think that one of the most important ones is to consider where we could do some work. And we've gone and looked at some various areas. Now, obviously, it's mentioned in the recommendations that consultation is very, very important on this. I think certainly probably with regards to the Grantham Gonaby Hill one, where there's quite a significant area marked out there. And I would imagine that there's, I think there may well even be football and stuff going on there. So it might well not be appropriate. But these are the best guesses, starter for 10s, I suppose, on our land that would be, a good start to go out to consultation on. In Stamford, the Foxglove Road play area, that is one where we've already done some rewilding projects. There's also a new play area on there that the good people of Stamford have funded and put up. And so there's an option there. I'm sure we're all familiar with Tattershall Drive. and the options there. There's already a wildflower bund there with rewilding and the like, and I think it offers an opportunity to perhaps extend some planting there. And then finally, an option on Rochester Drive in Bourne. So, without further ado, I'll let you continue, Madam Chairman, and feel free to ask any questions.
Thank you. Any comments from the committee at this point? Councillor Dilks?
Thanks, Madam Chairman. I'm sorry I was a little late. I'm glad I got here in time for this one, though, and thank you, Peter. I think there's some good progress in this, I've got to say, you know, I welcome the 4 areas, I really do, that we're looking at to get some trees in and to show some leadership. It talks about, you know, the report says we've got a leadership role, and I think we have. And what the report said to me, I read it last night. I found it quite frightening. I didn't realise how poor we were across Lincolnshire in terms of, you know, the tree cover that we've got. I knew that England was very poor, you know, in comparison to the rest of Europe. But you know, we're sort of about half. We've got half the tree cover that England's got, which itself is pretty poor. You know, when compared with the rest of Europe. I thought it was interesting to read that the council has got is responsible for managing about 6,000 trees, and I just sort of when you think that sounds like quite a lot of trees, but actually when you look at the last presentation that we had, I think it was from the gentleman from Woodland Trust who's just arrived. We were told that you know, when you plant trees, it's the maximum is about 1,600 per hectare. So if you look at that, that's about 4 hectares, you know, of our trees, and I appreciate they're only ours. What I'm really saying is I want to do more. Probably I always do, if it's possible. There's a couple of points in the report. It talks about we should do. It talks about if budgets allow, and really, the budgets really it should be part of the climate change budget. Tree planting should be, in my view, rather than any sort of separate budget or looking for money elsewhere. So I suppose I'm looking to, you know, up the climate change budget, Peter. But I'll leave that. And the other thing that sort of struck me was, do we have a sort of a tree map of the whole district, not just of our own trees, but, you know, I'm not asking for every tree, of course, but, you know, is there any sort of tree map? And it does talk about TPOs and the possibility that we could increase the number of TPOs. Do we even have a TPO map? Do we know where they all are, Peter? Sorry. Thank you ever so much. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine. Where shall I start? Budget to start with. Thanks for raising it. I mean, it's within the gift of the committee to recommend that we consider an enhanced budget for this, and that's within the papers. As we know, we need to know how you plan to fund that. You do have a climate action reserve that you could choose to use in that respect. In terms of maps of trees, I know that Phil's behind me, but I'm fairly sure that every TPO we will have mapped. Everything within our spaces we will have mapped. And I do know that when planning applications come in, of course, they have very accurate tree maps, but I'll pass over for further clarity to Phil.
Thank you, Councillor. So, yes, we do have all the TPOs in the district mapped. Every TPO is listed on our website. We have internal GIS mapping system. That's not available on the website as yet, but there are aspirations to have that on the website. So any member of the public can have a look and see spatially where the TPOs are in their area. That's a future project that we've got in the pipeline.
Thanks so much. I just wonder if Am I? Yes. I just wonder if I can come back very briefly and say I really welcome that Phil's here, you know, from planning, because, you know, planning has got a big role to play in promoting trees. And I think we are getting better at it. And I welcome, you know, particularly what the county's doing as well, you know, on trying to get trees planted. One question though I did have in relation to planning and trees, and it is that in the local plan there are areas designated for development, obviously, and you know, I am aware that developers, it's quite easy for developers to sort of quietly get rid of trees before they put their application in, and then it's too late to sort of save them and say, oh, you know. So I'm just wondering, you know, is that something that we ought to be looking at? And when I'm talking about a sort of a tree plan for the area, that's the area where I would first start to do it. So I don't know if that's actually done, Phil, if I'm behind the curve there, but yeah.
Yeah, who wants?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go first and just about. I mean, I think you mentioned a great point there, actually, Phil, because it's one of those things that fits before the council gets involved. But I suppose, is it in our gift to do anything about that? I don't think we've got any statutory responsibility or ability to do anything with that. But just highlighting it like you've done right now is a good way of opening that agenda up so that people are aware that this does happen. And I think if the local residents surrounding places where applications come in are aware of that, then they might be the ones that can perhaps provide action through their local parishes and the like.
Can I just say that I must admit, well, we had a big development in our ward and I was given and sent a list of TPOs within that development that was taking place, as if it was a case of, please be aware, these are trees with preservation orders on. You know, in other words, keep an eye. I don't know why, but I thought that was really good as a ward councillor that I was given that information with a rather large nursing home development. And I can say all the trees are still in place because I drive past it every day. But I think that's really good that they are listed on the website. I think we need to preserve our special trees, and they've got a TPO for a reason. But I do think that this report is absolutely fantastic. Lots of information written in it. Can I just ask how the working relationships going with Lincolnshire County Council in kind of reference to their treescape fund? Have we kind of been acknowledged a bit more, or?
Yes, I believe we have. I'm going to pass over to Gary because he's got the latest news on that one.
Good morning, councillors. Yes, we've got a positive working relationship with the County Council in general, but in regards to the joint application that was submitted, we engaged with them alongside other districts to submit the grant bid. It was actually only eligible to upper tier councils, which is why they were the lead partner in it. They have now been successful. We've now had confirmation that grant bid has been successful. So that's really positive. And we are now starting the work to engage with them to make plans for the use and spend of that money and planting of trees. As is noted in the report, they did write out to parish and town councils, and there was quite a good response rate from those in South Kesteven, slightly higher than other parts of the county, which can only be a positive thing to enable positive progress there. But happy to answer any points of detail on that.
Thank you, Gary. Do we know how much our share would be in that, or am I asking too soon?
No, that hasn't yet been determined, and it's partly going to now be determined based on the plans that we bring for the projects that's brought forward. But in total, I'm just checking it's in the public. It's 169,000 for the whole county, so it'll only be a share of that. We'd hope to get a good share, but that would be dependent on, clearly we'll be working in partnership to make sure there's some equity there. But we'd hope, being an active party and the fact that there was a good response from SK, parish and town councils, that we're in a good position there, but we'll be working positively with them. Thank you.
That's good. Thank you. That's good news. Any other comments? Councillor Westrup.
Thank you. This looks great, and I apologize. I don't know a lot of the background because obviously I've only joined recently, but I did have two questions. The Queen's Green Canopy Initiative, which next year, what are we looking at the moment? What options do we have? And are we looking to promote that across district to people as a sort of campaign, or is it Woodland Trust that we're supporting, and how's that going to work? The only other one I wanted to point out was Bourne, the choice of site. It's unusual in comparison to the other three to sort of, how do we get to that point, I guess, in that it's sort of outside of a green area on the side of a road. So that was the question. It just looked different.
In terms of the Queen's canopy, it's a national campaign. Actually, it might be an international campaign, but there are some proposals that have been explored and worked out. It's not yet a detailed stage to be able to share that, but there was a sighting that was starting to be looked at in Grantham, and clearly we're working closely with the Woodland Trust, and Nick from the Woodland Trust is at the back of the room, as has been mentioned earlier. And so we're working with him and his team around some of those options, but happy to bring further information to the next meeting, or to send an email between meetings when those proposals become more developed, if that helps.
Yeah, could you just repeat the second part of the question?
Yes, it was just that the sighting, or the suggested sighting in Bourne, was slightly different to the other three, in that it was a line and it's sort of alongside housing rather than in a green space that's already surrounded by quite a lot of trees.
Yeah, I mean, I think the team were struggling to find areas within Bourne to plant trees. We've had previous issues in terms of locating areas for rewilding, for example, and there are very few district council-owned slots of land that we have an opportunity for. So that was really the best one that came up. But we're always open to sort of have a look at further ones that come along. I believe that's just a farm track that it's next to as well, on that side. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Baxter?
Thank you. And like Councillor Dilks, I apologise for my late arrival. On the Rochester Drive, on page 24, it talks about Rochester Drive. I can't see the black penned area, neither can I see Rochester Drive on there. Can someone clarify?
I would imagine it's Rochester Crescent, probably, but the black line, Councillor Baxter, is if you look at the image and the housing at the top side on Rochester Crescent, there's a small area of amenity land to the right of that, and just by that, next to the adjacent farm track, there is a small black line. I do apologise that it's not visible for you.
Thank you. Moving to the rest of the report, I mean, it's certainly progress and very welcome. And also the conversations with the other organisations are very welcome. At the last meeting, we said that we were going to speak to the NFU, which it appears we have, and we were going to speak to the County Council, which it appears we have, and we were going to speak to the parish councils, which it appears that the county has spoken to the parishes, so they're kind of in the team. I don't know if we went to Bourne Parish Council or any of the other parish councils to ask about, you were saying how difficult it is to find somewhere in Bourne. Have we approached Bourne Parish Council, and if so, what was their response to it? And then within there seems to be a lot of funds, which is great. I've noticed obviously the extended budget, or the existing budgets that we have had, that we've talked about several times before about, oh, if we've got the budget available. I'm glad that it appears that we have got the existing budget available to plant 2 trees for every one. I wonder if we have enough funds for 3 trees for everyone, or 4 trees for everyone. Who knows? And then you mentioned the Treescapes Fund, the England Wood Creation Offer, the Queen's Green Canopy Initiative, and the Emergency Tree Fund. Not entirely sure what it is meant by emergency tree. I've certainly needed a tree in an emergency, and I'd expect most of us have. But some clarification of what qualifies for an emergency tree would be welcome. And so how much do we expect to get from these funds in terms of kind of numbers of trees or numbers of pounds, if you prefer. And when will we start planting? So last time we said we really need to get cracking with this, and let's move at speed and scale. If we approve this today, then we'll take it to cabinet. When we've taken it to cabinet, we're going to do stakeholder consultation, etc. Is there any chance that we're going to plant any trees this year that are going to survive? And finally, I wonder if you could say a little bit more about the tree planting in I don't know how to say this, Swinstead, and whether it's likely to happen, and if it is going to happen, who's going to fund it? Are we part of it? That's in paragraph 3.8.1. Also in paragraph 5, it says available options considered. Should that read alternative options considered? Thank you.
Peter?
Thank you. Yeah, there's a whole list there. So if I come back to you and ask you to re-clarify, please excuse me, Councillor Baxter. Firstly, I think Bourne has a town council, not a parish council. There'll be people with pins in dolls for you on that one. That's effectively the next the next phase. What we've done is we've identified areas of our land, of district council land which might be appropriate for tree planting, and the next stage is to consult with the residents surrounding that. I don't see any problem with, Bourne Town Council are perfectly at liberty to have a look at their own areas and their own gift and do their own thing. If they want to come to us for, to see what we've done, perfectly happy for that to be the case. Is this gone wrong? Yeah. I think, is that better? Yeah, I think. Yeah.
Yes, you may.
Chair, we agreed at the last meeting that we would try and work with parish councils. So it shouldn't be for Bourne Town Council to come to us. We should have already been to them.
I think if I don't mind, if you don't mind, Dr. Mosley, I think we're clarifying what land we've got first within those areas. And then if the town council or the parish councils have other areas that they have in mind, then yes, it's not set in stone. I think it was just we asked for SKDC land to be kind of identified. So I think I'm not saying that the conversation won't be held, but they have done what we asked them to do. The officers, they've come back with 4 areas in each area of SK land.
If you look at the action 1 which is on page 5 of the agenda, we did ask them to identify 4 sites, and that's welcome and great. We are making progress. I'm not saying that we haven't made any progress at all, but the previous action says that we will look at examining tangible proposals to increase the speed at which we work with partners, including parish councils. So I'm surprised that we haven't yet approached the parish councils. If we haven't, we may well have done.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Baxter. Dr. Mays?
Yeah, I believe that we're covering off the work with parish councils as the partnership role that we played with Lincolnshire County Council in terms of their bid and how that all went out. So kind of avoided duplication and got a lot of information to start with. So that's where that effectively has come from. I'm going to now that we've gone through it, I'm going to need somebody to just your second point. I'm getting a bit of hold. That's all. I think there was one emergency trees. What's an emergency tree? And I'm going to pass over to Gary on that one because it's.
That's simply the name of the Woodland Trust's the grant scheme in which they've been using. It ties back to, I believe, in terms of the climate emergency, the ecological emergency, and the tree emergency was an element of that. So that's their terminology, that's what they're calling it.
Yeah.
So I think the remaining questions were for all these different funds, which are all welcome. How much are we expecting to get from any or all or each in terms of either pounds or numbers of trees? And will we get any spades in the ground this autumn?
I would imagine that it's probably a chicken and egg thing here, in that we'll put applications in based on what our ambition is. So if our ambition is to do these, or perhaps do a bit more, then we'll put in a grant fund to the various pots of money to see how we can fund that. It shouldn't stop us from perhaps, again, utilising your climate action reserve fund if you wanted to kickstart some of this. And that would probably speed the process up, I would imagine, because that money is already in budget. If budgetary money has to come in, then obviously it has to go through the council process in terms of getting it folded into next year's budget. So there is an opportunity for the committee to perhaps speed up that process by using that to get some of these started, but we would have to consult with the local residents to make sure that it was appropriate and accepted. And that would be a good way forward. I think you had another one, wouldn't you, which was available options considered. I thought that was a fairly standard thing on things, on reports. I didn't realise the wording had changed.
Yeah, please clarify.
Yeah, if I may, I think it usually does say available options considered, but the available options which are listed in 5.1 are either 5.1, we only do our own spaces, or 5.2, we only look at other people's spaces. We haven't got option 3, which is we look at both, which is the proposal. So it's, I guess, a change in the way the report is written from what is usually happening. No, normally it says, yeah, and then it says the preferred option. So the preferred option is normally among the other. Well, it's possibly because I've not read the document as thoroughly as I should. But going back to the previous point, I asked, do we think that we're administratively or bureaucratically or technically going to be able to get any trees planted during the rest of this year?
It's a distinct possibility. As I said, I talked to you about if you wanted to use your climate action reserve. If you want to do that, then that can negate the need to go through cabinet to have a budget amendment or proposal put through, and that would speed things up. So yes, there is a possibility, but again, that's in your gift, isn't it?
That has to be kind of our decision, Councillor Baxter. We do have our kind of pot of money that we could allocate to trees this year. We need to make a decision as a committee. But going back to your previous thing, if you read the preferred option on page 18, it does say to work with all the parties that have been presented, and that is the preferred option. So I'm a bit lost myself in what you were just asking Councillor Mosley there.
Yeah,
the preferred option is to consider the recommendations as set out, including the proposal at paragraph 3.3, as well as furthering work with Lincolnshire County Council, the Woodland Trust, the National Farmers Union, and other key stakeholders. So it is kind of saying, let's work with everyone and get as many trees in our local area as possible.
Okay, so I apologise, Chair. Perhaps I've passed my confusion on to the rest of the committee. Sorry.
I'm easily confused, Councillor Baxter, so I was just trying to regain my own thoughts. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine. Right, so I would be prepared to propose that we use the fund that is Councillor Mosley has mentioned, as long as I'm sure of what the opportunity cost would be. And I'd ask either Councillor Mosley or the officers or you, Chair, to say, what else had we got in mind to spend these funds on? Bearing in mind that later on we're handing back a bunch of money to the government for measures that we really ought to do, solar panels. And
yeah, can we address that then? Because I do know, what you're saying, Councillor Baxter, but it is up to us. It's like, where do we want to use this money? And I mean, that is an issue that I'm conscious that we're in kind of September, late September now, and we do have this pot of money. So us as a committee do need to make a decision on where we are going and what we are thinking this year for the pot of money we've been allocated. So if we decide it's trees, then yes, let's get on with it. Let's go out for consultation of residents and kind of use some of the money, or use the money to, enable this. So yes.
So happy to propose that, although before I do propose that, I'd like to ask what the other alternatives are for spending that money in this year. Either ask a climate change officer or Mr. Smith or Councillor Mosley. And yes, how much is in the fund and how much is likely to be used on trees?
If I remember correctly, we have 20,000 still. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And what you spend it on is not, it's not for us to tell you or give you options on how to spend it. It's for you to suggest I think it's for you to suggest how you would like to spend it. And that's how it works. So I haven't got any plans for how you spend your money, but I'd welcome hearing what your plans might be, so that we can get that through. I know what you mean, Ashley. There's nothing that we've got, creeping around that we think you might want to spend the money on, that we're going to, we want to hear what your ideas are, and what the committee wants to do to help promote the climate action emergency that this council declared. So, yeah.
Councillor Ward, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, first time in the meeting. Thank you. Whether this has been brought up for, this money that we've been allocated, does this disappear if we don't use it? Does it carry on to the next year?
No, we have to apply for it every year. So we got allocated it last year, which we used, remind me, I do remember, we used it on lights, LEDs. And to be fair, that we did a task and finish to kind of conclude to use it on that. So yes, we do need to kind of address this, because it will go back into the general budget and we have to apply every year. Yeah, we lose it if we don't use it.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, that's answered the question.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way it went last year is that the committee recommended that I put forward a bid for renewing the budget each year. So you got that moving on, and I'll just say right now that I'm happy to put that bid in again for next year, so that it's for these quick wins and things that you identify during your year as a committee that you want to make a difference with.
Councillor Baxter.
So in that case, Chair, I'd happily propose that we ask the relevant parties to allocate that money to tree planting, because even if there is an alternative, it's high profile, it shows that we're getting on with stuff, we can stand in a photograph with it and we can say we care about climate change. I think it's a good way to spend the money.
Any seconders?
I'll second it. I'll second it.
Can we take a vote? Oh, can we take a vote on that, please, committee? Are we all happy? I mean, I'm happy. Yep. Can that be minuted, please, that we would like to add money to tree planting, please? Councillor Dilks?
Oh, yeah, well, actually, I was voting, but if I could just say that the sort of next question after that is following up on Councillor Baxter's question is how long will the consultation take? And can we get the trees in the ground this year? That's the question. Or do we have to wait until? Is it? Autumn is, we're told, I think, the best time to plant, isn't it? Trees.
Can I just check the process now? So we have got 4 proposed kind of areas of planting within SK. Do we then now go to parish and town councils respectively, or do you feel that we are repeating what the county council's doing? I'm just thinking, now we've kind of allocated our money and we want to get on with tree planting, that is this now a conversation, and how quick can we get the consultations out, really?
Yeah, the process now will be that we'll go out to the town councils, any relevant parishes, and also local residents. The consultation will normally be a 4-week consultation, to gain views, and a lot of it will be sort of knocking on doors in many respects, because it'll be very local to where those particular areas are. I would imagine that some will come back where residents would be unhappy. I would imagine some will come back where it will be fine. So I think, bearing in mind that for the budget for the 4 with 1 year's maintenance came to around about £30,000, I would imagine that after consultation we'll have something to go at. We can get some in the ground and make sure that we make best use of that money. So I think that's the way that it goes. Gary wants to just come in, if you don't mind.
Thank you. Yeah, Gary.
Thank you. Just to add further to what Peter was saying there. So previously we liaised directly also with the SKDC relevant ward councillors and sort of copied in the town or parish clerk to enable then the town council link to be made, but for the views to be collated via that ward and ward councillors. The other point just to make is so the climate reserve is 20k. So that I'm just highlighting that that's not the full amount for those 4 proposals to go forward. But yeah, exactly. So we'll engage on that basis, but I suspect, as Peter's saying, that they won't all be supported, and therefore that will be okay. But if they were all supported, then there'll be a choice that we would need to make as to which ones to allocate the remaining funds to. But yeah, or an amended schemes, as you say. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Councillor Baxter.
Just an observation, Chair. I'm not a qualified accountant and I'm not a member of SIPFA or anything else, but I don't understand why we have so many hurdles in order to spend the money on planting a tree of up to £30,000 or whatever, when we can spend £40,000 on planning consultants to do a review without it going to any committee anywhere.
I think purely because we've got we've kind of got a cost of trees, and they've said that the estimated cost here for 4 sites is 30 grand. We have 20,000 that we can use. So, you know, we can't negotiate too much on a cost of a tree. It costs, and then the maintenance and looking after is a fixed fee.
No, what I'm saying is that we're kind of it's being suggested that the available budget isn't there, but the budget was available for Kratos and the budget is available for other things.
But that's allocated from different budgets. We're talking about our 20,000 that we've just agreed to spend on trees. So we have a fixed amount that we've got from the council's budget to do a quick fix. So other budget areas doesn't come into consideration when we're talking about the money that's allocated to the committee that we've just voted on to use. Any other comments, or can we kind of go to a vote to accept the recommendations that we work with all partnerships to move tree planting and now our own 20,000 budget to plant trees? Because I'd like to propose that, please.
Yeah, Madam Chair, we do just need to get in, if I can suggest, and I think there is a consensus there that, you know, if we can possibly get it done this year, we should do, and we just need to get that in our resolution. Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to accept that. Any other comments? So I'm happy to propose that we go with the recommendations that we work along all partnerships to get as many trees as possible in, and we have voted to use our £20,000 budget that we're allocated to enable this to happen within this year. Well, I'm very nervous saying that, but that's what I'm saying. So can I have a second, as soon as possible, a seconder, please?
A second.
Yeah, if at all possible. Better wording. So Councillor Ward has seconded. Can we take a vote, please? I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you for that. Moving on to agenda item 7, the climate and carbon dashboard. Who's presenting? Is that Serena or Peter?
Serena.
Councillor Mosley?
Oh, that's better. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman. And yeah, this is just a quick introduction to the annual summary of the carbon footprint report. Obviously, it's based on all of the hard work that Serena and her colleagues do. And I'll leave it to her. I think this has been actually to a few other committees. I think this goes into FEDCO, doesn't it? Oh, it doesn't. It's been here before. That's right. That was it. So I'll leave Serena to go over the detail. Thank you.
That's better. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. So we have provided this committee previous updates on the council's own carbon emissions. So just to clarify, this statement relates only to the operations of SKDC and not to the wider district, because I know that we do consider that, although there is one page within this document that does relate to the emissions of the carbon emissions of the district more widely, over which we have less control, but this committee has stated that it's of interesting context. The last statement we considered around carbon emissions for the council were not a full account of the financial year. They were only 3 quarters of the year because the data was still being finalised. This is the final annual statement, which includes other aspects of the carbon footprint where data is less readily available. So, for example, we look at the F-gas register, and we look at the contribution from from solar power generation, which would have a negative impact. And we look at waste and water and a few other aspects. So it's a comprehensive account for the year, essentially. So that the headline information can be seen on page 2 of the appendix, which includes the SKDC council emissions from the year 2020-2021. Now, I'm sure we all appreciate that this year was subject to really some quite significant disruptions due to the sort of COVID lockdowns. And that had a really quite striking impact on our operations. We're not alone in this. Every council will be in a similar position of having to adapt and close buildings and close facilities. Those close downs have naturally had an impact on our energy use and our carbon emissions. And a big impact from that is that we've seen a 25% reduction compared to our baseline, which is 2 years previous. So the majority of that reduction does come from the closure of leisure centre facilities, but there is also a contribution from the reduction of electricity use as well. So some really sizable reductions. The fleet fuel use did increase slightly, which was about 2.5% more than the baseline. This is principally due to pressure on the sort of waste collection vehicles that increased it compared to the baseline year there. And there was also an increase in the contribution of gas used in our corporate buildings and buildings that are within the housing portfolio, part of that as well. Again, that's a national trend where people were spending more time at home during the lockdowns and more energy was used at homes compared to within offices and public spaces of that nature. So we obviously have seen quite a significant reduction, which we should be proud of. However, obviously this reduction relates mostly due to sort of building closures and other changes which are outside of our control. So there will be lots of opportunities to review if there's any parts of that we can retain and keep those carbon reductions, as well as any sort of further investment that we might need to make in our assets to ensure that we have reductions that work towards that 30% target by the end of the decade that the council has made. So I'm happy to take any questions on the carbon footprint report, or I'm sure Dr. Mosley is as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Serena. Any questions? Councillor Dilks?
More a comment, Madam Chairman, if I may. Obviously, COVID seems to have distorted everything. Appreciate that. And you know, when you look at our achievement, we're 24, nearly 25% down on the baseline in our carbon output, which is really welcome. But when you look at that, that's actually 10 years worth of our target, isn't it? You know, which I think it's 190 tons that is the target per year. So it's really going to look at, and the challenge really is going to be next year and the year after, in terms of, you know, when it goes up, it's not going to look so good. Do you know what I'm saying? And so it's a real sort of challenge. And I know, yes, we're looking at only what our output, the district council output, but I really do think that, you know, we're getting to the stage where we need to be doing more to educate and encourage people across the district to reduce, you know, our carbon output, you know, particularly in homes and in transport, which is where the challenges seem to be. So I think we've made a good start ourselves, you know, yes, distorted by COVID, but you know, there have been some good things that the council's doing in reducing carbon output. And I think when we started this, we did say that, you know, actually we need to sort of get our own house in order or start showing the way forward before we sort of go out and start lecturing other people. But I do think that, you know, we should be, see, our output, the district council output, is infinitesimal compared to the whole picture, isn't it? You know, I can't remember what the figures are, but you know, it is. You know, can you see what I'm saying? So I'm just sort of saying, when, you know, at some point, I think, you know, the challenge is going to be, how do we go out to the public and say, now it's your turn? You know.
Yeah, councillor Mosley.
Yeah, and welcome those points, councillor Dilks, and I think perhaps a report slightly further on might indicate how we go out and tell people what we're doing and that it's that it's their responsibility. But I suppose you also highlight the scatter information, which is the district wide, and when you put our use as a district into context with that, it's a drop in the ocean. It's incumbent upon us all to discuss this at these meetings that are public and to get it minuted, that actually, it's the responsibility of every resident, every organisation, every public sector organisation to do their bit to look at what they're using and to reduce. And reduce isn't said enough. It's said when we come to a meeting. It's very rarely said in some of the partnership meetings I go to. It's very rarely said when you go out onto the streets. Rather than think about, for example, in terms of waste, which is obviously one of the biggest ones that we deal with, and again, Serena mentioned the fact that the fleet use was up because of everybody working at home, etc. But everybody's moved to a lifestyle where they order online and have it delivered in a carton in packaging, and nobody's really thinking about, do I really need to buy that? Do I really need that vehicle to drive up to my house with that thing packaged in 4 layers of cardboard? It's incumbent probably on every councillor in this organisation to make sure that when you go to your parish meetings and your town council meetings that you mention reducing. It all goes towards helping. So thank you for your comments, Councillor Dix. I really welcome that. Yeah.
Any further comments? Councillor Westrop.
Thank you. This is really positive. I'm thinking forwards, and next year's numbers aren't going to be quite so green. So where would we have expected to be now rather than minus 24.8%, which is brilliant, really, really good. Thank you, actually, COVID. It's helped a huge amount. Where would we have expected to be, and what are we expecting the numbers to look like next year if we take into account the effect of the leisure centres and everything else?
I'll start and then pass over to Serena because she's got the detail of this.
Of course.
You're absolutely right. Next year isn't going to look rosy at all. We've got a target. I think you mentioned it, Councillor Dilks, 190 tonnes a year. But that was never going to be linear. That's if you draw a straight line from where you start to where you need to be by 2030. But obviously we want our ambitions to be greater than that. So everything that we can do, we will do. But there are other things that are happening in the national infrastructure that are going to help us with that. So, for example, the decarbonisation of the grid and the supply of renewable energy rather than gas-powered or fossil-fueled energy is going to assist in that. And again, that tends to come online later in the decade. And that's when you'll start to see that come in. But I'll pass on to, I've probably stolen Serena's thunder there, but I'll pass on to Serena for a bit more detail if she's got any.
Thank you, Councillor. So yes, 25% this year is a really significant reduction. The year previous, the reduction was only 6%, which is more in line with what we would expect. But still, if we continued a trend of 6% each year, that would comfortably meet our 30% target by the end of the decade. So as Councillor Mosley has mentioned, the really big opportunities for us are set out in terms of reduction from the fleet within our buildings, and some of it is out of our hands in that the ongoing decarb of the supply of electricity will help us meet our target without us needing to do very much at all. But there certainly are significant things that we will want to do before the end of the decade to help meet that target, and I fully expect, yes, that next year it will be less of a reduction than 25%, unfortunately. Thank you.
Can I just ask a question? Have we kind of seen a lot of our staff members return to the office, or are we still running that? There are a few that choose to, they're still kind of working from home and stuff. And is that kind of a thing that would encourage? Because I know that would help, but I'm just wondering where we're sitting at the minute.
Well, I mean, I believe we've got a hybrid model in place at the moment where some people work at home if they can, some people come into work if they need to. I think there'll be a balance of choice for people as they move forward. Just bear in mind that if you move somebody out of a building like this, you put them back in their home, and they'll be using their home and heating their home and doing all of the things in their home that you would normally do in a building. So it's a question that we do need to ask ourselves: is what's the best and most efficient way of dealing with that? I believe that the agile working program is probably going to help us out there. We expedited that when COVID came along and made sure that every single member of staff could access the network and do their work from home during that emergency situation. But when that comes back in, it means that staff don't need they don't need an office on their own, and they won't have an office on their own. They'll be able to work wherever is available and wherever we make as efficient as possible for them to do their job. So that's where it will go. I think it's a bit too early to say what the norm will be as we move out. I think there are some staff that are welcoming coming back in and having that human contact, and I think that's really good for them. I think there are others that have found that actually the hybrid model and working from home really works for them too and for their lifestyles. So I think as an organisation, and I'm sure the Chief Executive will be very mindful of this, we will make sure that SKDC is a great place to work, as we continue to say, and really fits with what our staff needs are.
Thank you for that. It was just a bit of a question that kind of fit in that area. Thank you for that. Any other comments? Councillor Baxter?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation report and so on. Looking at page 28, that's the headline page, isn't it? With the little logos on it. As an aside, if we could get the CO2 notation in these documents fixed, that would be great, with a subscript 2. If the software doesn't allow you to do that, then obviously you can't get around it, but it's a pedantic point. We don't, even though we've had a year when the leisure centres have been closed and the art centres have been less functional, and so we would expect the leased assets to be down a lot, which we are, and probably the only positive spin-off of having a temporarily / permanent closure of Deepings Leisure Centre is that the impact that it has on CO2 emissions. I think I'd rather have the CO2 emissions in a functional leisure centre. It's also something that members should bear in mind as we go forward with plans for the new leisure centre or the refurbished leisure centre, what the CO2 emissions are likely to be, because a new leisure centre will be far less carbon, will produce far less carbon than a new leisure centre. But the fleet and the gas don't appear to have changed much at all. So can I ask, how are the plans for making the fleet greener coming along? And what actions can we take in the short or medium term to reduce gas usage? Because frankly, with the buildings almost shut for the last year, you would have expected that our gas use would have come down considerably more, wouldn't you?
Councillor Mosley?
Yeah, thank you. I think actually I would take the 2.5% increase in fleet CO2 based on the fact that we were collecting 30% more waste as actually a good thing. And that's because we have a fleet replacement schedule, which makes sure that we get the most efficient vehicles on a rolling programme. So the oldest vehicle that we should have in our fleet is 8 years old. We replace 4 a year. And those 4 new ones will come in. They'll have the very latest emissions technology on them. We are watching closely what happens with our neighbours. So I believe Nottingham have some electric RCVs. We do need to be mindful within South Kesteven that we're not Nottingham city centre or an urban metropolis, and that we have significant rural miles to do. And that's the challenge for us. That's what we're going to be watching out for. And we've got to keep our eye on what technology comes along. As soon as there's something viable, we can switch our fleet replacement strategy to make sure we harness that But it needs to be right for the district. The one thing that we can't do is we can't have waste stacking up outside everybody's homes, even though we do want them to reduce it. That's probably not the best way to encourage it. In terms of the gas side of things, I think you're right. What I think is happening is that we are identifying what is likely to happen post-pandemic in terms of our need for our assets. And once we know what that is, then obviously if we don't need an asset, why have it? You know, there's no point in heating it if we don't need it. Is there a better use for it? Does somebody else want to use it for something else? Is there a way of moving it on and the like? And I think that will be part of how you take that down. I appreciate what you said about the about the leisure centres. Yeah, they were a big issue in terms of obviously they weren't in operation. I think they probably did keep the pools heated a little. I'm not quite sure how that worked, but effectively you're right. There is an opportunity as we come out of here to make sure that specifically within the deepings that anything that we do as a council is energy efficient. And I think it's important for us to make sure that we highlight that at every stage of the process moving forward. I hope that answers your question anyway.
Thank you. Any other comments, or should we move on? Okay, thank you. Oh, did you want to comment?
Yes, I'd being one of those people that finds it very useful to be able to come into the building at times when other people are quite happy to work at home. I have no family, so when I'm at home, it's me and the cat. So I think we have to take some care when we're sort of saying, well, yes, everybody can work from home or everybody can come in for 2 or 3 days, that it does have significant effects on some people. And it's something that lots of people say, oh, I like it working from home, but they don't think of the other side.
Yeah, I think we do kind of think about that as a council, especially with the well-being that we're all acknowledging. So thank you for that, Councillor Smith. If everyone's happy, can we move on to the next agenda item? Agenda item 8, Climate Matters Annual Report. Councillor Mosley?
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chairman. And appended to your reports is the 21 version of Climate Matters. If you remember, last year we did our first one where we put out a nice document to let everybody know what we were doing to address the climate issues that we had we had an opportunity to affect. This is the second one of those. I do see this as being an annual thing, and I think this goes back to something that Councillor Dilk said earlier about how you get the message out to local residents about and about leading in that respect and doing what we can. And I do hope that Climate Matters does that. We obviously put in there the figures that you've just seen in the previous dashboard. We also talk with some précis about things like planning on the tree-lined streets, about the efficient LED rollout, about how we're monitoring what we're doing, and about what we plan to do in the future. So I'll leave this open for discussion, but I think making sure that we cover both what we're doing, but in the context of the broader climate issues, is a good way of putting the message out there for people to read and to try and get them to engage and perhaps do their bit as well. So I'll leave that one open.
Thank you, Councillor Mosley. Any comments? Councillor Johnson.
Peter, I think this is fantastic. I think it's very easy to read. It's very easy to understand. And I, for one, really appreciate this document, and I hope it continues.
Thank you. Any other comments from any councillor? Councillor Baxter?
Thank you. Say again, this hasn't gone out yet, has it? No. Can we please get the notation for the CO2 correct? Uppercase C, uppercase O and subscript 2. Otherwise people will laugh. And great report, full colour and all that. I can't find much fault with it. I'm interested in on page 40, I don't know what page it is in the magazine, but it says develop bid to DEFRA Treescapes Fund. We didn't pick that up earlier, but does developing a bid to a DEFRA Treescape Fund mean that we as a district council will be planting any trees this year? If not, what does it mean? What is the consequence of having developed a bid to the DEFRA Treescapes Fund?
I think, Councillor Bax, sorry, I asked a question around that. It's the partnership one with Lincolnshire County Council that I asked for an update and the funding has been acknowledged and now we are working with them. That is the same DEFRA Treescape Fund.
So
is that correct?
So when will it deliver a tree?
That I'm unsure of because at the minute we're just going through the process working with partnerships. We don't always set the time and I know that
no, actually we haven't, sorry, we developed the bid. I don't think we've heard back from the bid yet, have we? We haven't.
Yeah, well, we haven't been told how much we've got, but the bid's gone through to county councils, so now we've got to kind of.
And we're waiting for
them. Yes,
the funding.
correct,
Okay, yeah, but sorry, my mistake. And then I wondered if you could also, if you've got any feedback on the LED streetlights update. It talks about over 600 lights to be upgraded. I thought we had 1,000 lights that needed to be upgraded. And last time I paid attention, we'd done about something like 30. Can you tell us how many streetlights have, it says that, yeah, how many have actually been done of these streetlights?
I'll leave that one to you, Councillor.
Yeah, no. I'm going to have to, we'll get the actual number of how many have been done. The contractor is replacing them as we speak. So we've got more than 1,000 footlights throughout the district. We've got nearly 4,000, and this was a rolling programme of changing some. So we were kickstarting the LED replacement programme with some investor safe funding, plus the climate reserve that you used last year, etc., and then using the ongoing savings each year to accelerate the project over the period of time. There are nearly 4,000 across the district that we're responsible for. There was a slight delay because we went through procurement to get the right heads to go on these lamps, because we did a trial with the intelligent street lights. And we didn't want to replace them and then not have, and then realize that we needed the intelligent ones later on and then not be able to do something with them. So the replacement heads that we're putting in are ones that we can add sensors to at a later date and connect through an Internet of Things network, so that we can then do some of the motion sensing perhaps and the like, to increase the savings when there's perhaps nobody walking near them. So that's where we are. But we can get the numbers for you on how many we've put up, but I don't have them off the top of my head. But the guys, I believe, are out on the street now, aren't they? Yeah, the contractor's working it through, apparently, according to Gary.
Can I ask the officer, please? Is it more than 100?
Sorry, Councillor Baxter, I don't have the figures with me, but I'm happy to respond back to you outside of the meeting.
Surely you know.
If it's a rolling programme that people are actually doing now, then possibly not. They've just clearly said that it's a rolling programme and we have got people out there replacing light bulbs currently.
Yeah, I mean, we've done some. I know that I've got LED lights in the village I live in. So some of them will have been done, and there is a contractor working through the LED replacement programme at the moment. They've been appointed, they're doing the work.
Councillor Dilks, did I see your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I think the page that strikes me or hits me the hardest is page 42, which is the insight into the district-wide carbon emission figures. And it was sort of building on what I said earlier, and I welcome what Peter came back with and others. That page, to me, has the makings, I would suggest, of a poster that this council could produce that could go into libraries, be sent to schools, clubs and other places, and used repeatedly on Facebook, on our own Facebook. It needs some work to kind of make it look like the previous page, page 39, that's really good. But I just think if we, I don't particularly want to be going out saying, look, aren't we good? We've reduced it by 24% when we know what's going to happen next year. It's going to be a difficult sell next year. But I just think that could be jazzed up into, to use a technical term, into some sort of poster that would be quite useful to say, what are you doing about it? Do you know what I'm saying? I just wonder if that's a possibility, because when you look at those figures, it's 1/3 million tons on carbon produced in our district from transport. Now, all of us can't, part of that we know it's the A1 and stuff like that, but we do have a role to play. And when you think that what we've done so far, we were talking about the comparison earlier, we've achieved a reduction of 1,800 tons, which is, there's a lot more to do is kind of what I'm saying. So what do you think? Is that poster idea a possibility?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the communications team do regularly put stuff up on the Facebook pages and the Twitters and the LinkedIns and the like. And I think if we pass this through to them, I'm sure they can do something with that. You're absolutely right to highlight it. Next year is going to be difficult because we're turning things back on rather than keeping things turned off. And I do hope that people recognise that when it comes round to it, and actually look at, okay, it's highly likely that actually the number will go up next year. But we have to think about all of these things in context. And I don't think I'd like to think that the people of South Kesteven are smart enough to recognise that and accept that that's the case, but equally that they can identify that there's a contribution that everyone can make too.
Thank you. Councillor Westrap.
Yeah, thank you. I echo Councillor Johnson. Actually, it looks really, really good. My question is, what are we doing with it beyond putting it in these packs and letting us see it? How are we communicating it? And we're not printing it, are we? Just check.
My understanding is that it's available on our website in a PDF through that, but I wasn't aware that we were printing it. But it'll be part and parcel of us going out through all of the media streams. But thank you for that.
Thank you. There's no other comments. Then we'll move on. Agenda item 9. Public sector decarbonisation scheme update. If I can hand over to Peter, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. And disappointing to bring this one to this committee, to be fair. Really hoping that this was going to get done efficiently and on time. And unfortunately, we are in a position where we have had to close down the PSDS project. We came to council for the budget approval to accept the money in just before budget last year. We acknowledged at the time that timescales were tight, but we had an ambition to deliver. We worked to deliver that, but throughout the process, the lead times for some key equipment became too long, basically. And I mean, I've spoken to a business that I do work for who are looking at changing theirs, and they've been quoted over 8 months for a lead time for an air source heat pump. And effectively, there's a huge demand and a limited supply. Consequently, our provider withdrew and therefore left us in a position where, whilst we tried to work a way whereby we could perhaps reduce our reliance on the key equipment, it wasn't going to be possible. Bearing in mind the risks with regards to the way that the money was given to us, it was better at that time to say, right, okay, well, we'll walk away from this one and let's look at how we can move forward and get money in the future to do the same thing, but perhaps with in a slightly different mechanism. So yeah, disappointing. I think in the 4 years that I've been a cabinet member for commercial operations, this is probably the only project that hasn't worked. I think the ambition therefore is to make sure let's find one where we can make it work in the future. It would have been lovely if it had. It hasn't, unfortunately. I think there's very little to say about it. I'm all for looking forward and how we can move forward rather than looking back and thinking, oh, well, what a disappointment. It is a disappointment, but I'm past that now and I want to work out a way of getting this done, in the next few years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mosley. Any comments? If I may, I'm going to go first. Yeah, it's very disappointing that this has come. I totally understand, having read the pack fully, the information's all there. My concern is, maybe not a concern, I see that there might be another round that we could apply for. Would we be able to pick up where we've finished, or would we have to start the whole process again? That was just kind of a question, really.
There's a huge amount of development work that's already been done, which can be useful in future rounds for sure. It's really about what the ambition is and what the future funding rounds look like. So yeah, I don't think anything's been wasted. We've certainly learned an awful lot about how the market is moving at the moment, but also an awful lot about what we need to make the best of that. So I'm quite comfortable that future rounds will be successful and we'll be able to deliver something which helps us decarbonise our public realm.
That's really good to hear, because I'd hate to think that we've wasted time. But if we can kind of move forward from that point, that's great. I mean, it is such a shame, but that's where we are. So, Councillor Dilks. I'm sorry, Ashley. Okay, whoever first. Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Chair, and very generous of you, Councillor Dilks. Yes, it's a shame. It's dreadful. It's dreadful that this council is giving back almost £1 million of funding to the government. With respect, it's more likely the fault of the government and their chaotic planning of this kind of initiative, which is not new. It's happened time and time again with initiatives within the energy efficiency industry. And this is no surprise. I mean, I spoke to a colleague who said that this was inevitable, that a stagnant market, after the end of feed-in tariffs, the solar panel industry has kind of fallen off a cliff, and then the government has lit a bonfire under it and expected it to crack on and be able to deliver everything to everyone. It was never going to work, as I believe I said at a previous meeting, although it's not minuted, and sadly there's no recording. So what could this have been delivered by SKDC? I think in terms of procurement, I don't really know that it could. I'm not really sure at what stage we realised that Engie were going to fail to deliver. I'm not quite sure of the roles of the other people involved and why they couldn't deliver, other than it's a very busy marketplace at the moment. But also the planning, how close did we get to applying for planning permission? Are there plans ready to go? Did we actually submit the plans for planning permission? Because surely if we're planning to put solar panels, we could spend the 150 quid to get the planning permission for the listed buildings, so that if money does arrive later on, we're ready to go, rather than having to wait 3 months for the planners to and are about it. So yeah, I'm quite shocked really that there isn't anyone that can deliver any of the measures. Would we have to do all the measures at the same time? Would we have had to deliver every single thing, or could we have done at least the one of the air source heat pumps or one of the solar panels? Is there not an easier way to get some of the money spent, and could we not still do that? And finally, the future rounds, the public sector decarbonisation schemes, I don't think future rounds will allow schemes like ours. I think ours are, it's my understanding that the measures we were proposing were so kind of basic and a matter of fact and should have been done years ago, that future rounds of PSDS will not allow them, but put me right if I'm wrong. Thanks.
Councillor Mosley.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for your comments. I mean, you've highlighted something about the government and the injection of capital into a sector that wasn't ready to capitalise on it, which, you know, ultimately is a difficult thing. I don't believe that planning would have been the constraint to delivery. I believe that was well in track, in fact, and people were looking at that. But actually, it was it specifically the lead time on the major components. Now, you mentioned about spending bits of the money, and we did try and investigate that, but the agreement was that it all had to be delivered on a certain date. It all had to be delivered. We did try to change some of that. It just didn't seem to work out. And one of the key components still remained being those air source heat pumps. So it was always going to be that way. Now, I think Serena's probably going to give you a bit of information about the future rounding. My indication is that we're quite positive about that. It won't be as generous, for sure. It may require us to put some funding in to get some out as well. So again, that's disappointing because the previous one, it was 100% funded, you know, and they don't often come along, which is why we really wanted to grasp it. I do believe that SK could have delivered it, but it was that particular supply chain problem which has effectively scuppered us in this particular instance, and it was brought on by basically injecting £2 billion worth of money into a market that couldn't provide the equipment for it. That's the way, you know, that's the way it is. Would you like to just comment on the future rounds, Serena?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, so regarding future rounds, all of the technologies that were proposed within this application would, my understanding is, be eligible under future rounds. There's nothing in there that we proposed regarding LEDs, insulation, cavity wall insulation, roof insulation that couldn't be funded under future iterations. The focus of future funding will still be on heating systems and what we can do around that. So we would need to carefully consider how we tackle that in each of the buildings, and everything, all of the other proposed technologies would need to support the heating system, so make the buildings more energy efficient, more airtight, and less expensive to run and maintain effectively. Thank you.
Do you want to quickly come back, Councillor Baxter, and then I'll move on?
I would be very pleased to hear that. I think you're incorrect, but we'll see. The next round opens on the 6th of October. What steps have we taken to get our ducks in a row for the phase 3 of the public sector decarbonisation scheme?
Thank you. So I'm aware that the next round is opening soon. As Councillor Mosley has mentioned, there's lots of the work that we've done under this round that will be eligible for the next round. There are very slightly different eligibility criteria for the next round. And the major change is that the authority receiving the funding is expected to contribute a proportion for upgrading the heating system that will need some further work, and a capital contribution from the council should we be interested in applying. So we are reviewing that as I speak at the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Dilks?
Yeah, thank you. I've got to say my information is, and I accept, you know, nobody quite knows yet, but I thought that the government had made it clear that the phase 3, and I would like to sort of clarify, was our grant made under phase 1 or phase 2? There's some confusion slightly on that. But just to go on, I understood that phase 3 would not allow us to progress with, you know, these particular projects because I understood that it was more directed to local authority housing projects. Phase 3. I may be wrong on that as well, but I just ask for that to be checked. You know. Yeah. Yeah.
apologies. Thank you, Councillor. So just to confirm, our allocation was from PSDS round 1, which was the first round of funding. And as such, they have made subsequent changes to the scheme, SALIX, and have slightly tightened the eligibility criteria and introduced a contribution from the authority. So they've made some changes, which wasn't unexpected, but does change our thinking behind why we would apply, and we would need to consider our own capital contribution as well. I think regarding housing, so this scheme is only for public sector corporate buildings, non-domestic buildings. There are a number of separate grant schemes for the domestic sector, for social housing, for low-income housing in the private rented sector or owner-occupied sector. And there had been the Green Homes grant, which was open to everyone, but unfortunately that was rolled back. Obviously, I do hope as a climate change officer that there is some future version of that that's open to everyone, because it made it very straightforward. But in terms of this, the sort of commercial buildings and domestic buildings are very different sectors. So it is a stream of funding just for public sector owned and occupied buildings that aren't domestic. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Madam Chairman. I appreciate that. As I say, that's just what I'd heard, and you know, I haven't got chapter and verse on it, so that information may be wrong. Nobody likes handing back £1 million to the government, of course, but I think we can understand how we've got here. I would say, however, it was all pretty gung ho on the 1st of March, as I recall it, when the full council agreed to accept the grant on those terms. And I understood that we actually did manage to get the deadline pushed from the end of September to March, you know, which was an achievement. But I understand that, you know, why and if a contractor pulled out, you know, it put us in difficulty. But I would say at the time, on March whenever it was, the 1st, St. David's Day, that we there was no mention in the minutes, because I looked them up. There's no mention in the minutes of the difficulties and the challenges that the grant would offer us. Well, there wasn't, Peter. I've looked it up. Yeah, no, I'm just saying it may have been mentioned in passing, but it wasn't minuted. So I'd just sort of say that, and perhaps it ought to have been to sort of you know, show the challenges. That's all I'm saying. Just sort of show the challenges. I do ask though, would it have been possible to have gone ahead with part of the, you know, not necessarily with all 4 projects? I think there were 4, weren't there? Yes. But would it have been possible to have gone ahead with any one of them? And I don't know which one might have been, you know, more favourable, but all possible, or did we have to go ahead with the whole project in order not to hand the money back? I think that's all that's my main sort of question. You know, would it have been possible to have done any of it with that grant without having to hand the whole lot back? Can you see where I'm going?
Yeah, please, Councillor
Yeah,
Mosley.
I think somebody's already asked the same thing, and I think I might have already said that it was an all or nothing, and it was within the agreement that we signed, and it was with the BEIS, in fact, and aside from that, because I believe the government realised that the SALIX administration of that was not going to expedite it in the way they wanted, so we got a direct fund. But the terms of that were that it all had to be delivered, all of it. And if we didn't deliver all of it, we would be at risk of a council of having to pay all of it back, having spent some of it. So when you're talking about that kind of money, that's a lot of money. I do remember talking about the report. It's a shame it's not minuted in that, but I did highlight the challenges that were associated with the tight deadlines. When it came to you, we'd even extended the deadline for signing, so that which is why it had to get moved up an agenda item and get done before a 5 o'clock deadline on the day. I remember we were very nervous about it. I mean, it was one of those things. It offered us a huge opportunity. There's no doubt about that. It's massively disappointing And I'm glad actually that the members in the chamber here share my disappointment and my sadness that it hasn't quite worked out on this occasion. But I do welcome the continued support for future rounds and the support that the members of this council can give so that we can get something done in the future. I think it's really important that we'll push forward, to try and make that happen.
Thanks for that, Dr. Mosey. My only other sort of question on it is presumably because of the limitations and the challenges, we'll not be the only council that's handing it back. So I would ask, if we have we got knowledge of any others yet handing it back? It's probably early days, but at some point I would appreciate that information. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously SADC haven't been specific about who, but they've given us an indication that other organisations have withdrawn. They've also given us an indication that some have chosen to continue but take the risk. Yeah, based on that. So it covers a cross section. I think it's safe to say that on their information that we are not alone, but they weren't specific in which ones, and I wouldn't expect them to be fair.
Just a quick question about the next one, and please excuse me if you can't answer this. So the next round that we're applying for, you say there's a percentage that the council may have to put up. Do we roughly know, or is that something that we'll kind of discuss nearer the time? I'm happy for you to shoot me down.
Thank you, Councillor. So I can't put a figure on it, but what it technically relates to is what it would have cost to upgrade the heating system to a new gas boiler and all of the supporting infrastructure for that. So that's very dependent on the building in question, the infrastructure that building has, any existing issues, pipe work, insulation, a lot of different aspects essentially. So apologies, I can't put a figure on that right now. It would only be a proportion of the money that we were allocated, but it's difficult to say at this stage what we would be expected to contribute.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sorry to kind of put you on the spot about that. Thank you. Okay, if there's no further comments, we shall move on. Thank you for bringing that. And again, I just kind of want to kind of say that, I think as a committee, we are very disappointed it's not been able to be achieved. So thank you for that. Okay, agenda item 10, the health and safety policy. And Peter?
Thank you. Yeah. Again, this is something we bring to the committee periodically. I think this is the second time I've brought this. It could be the third, in fact, I'm not quite sure. It's every couple of years or so that we bring an updated health and safety policy. It's for the members to endorse, if possible, and give comments and feedback to help us steer the direction of the policy moving forward. Obviously, you'll note from it that there are new sections in there that we wouldn't have previously had pre-COVID. And so, they're obviously the team have been working hard on that. We do have a member of the team here today to answer any detailed questions on it, but this is basically an updated continuation of a policy for the members' information and for comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from committee members? Councillor Westropp?
I just have one really brief point. I don't know whether it's a point or a question, but it was difficult to know which bits were new bits and which bits weren't new bits in the printed version that we've got. So it would have been really useful to be able to know which ones were new, but it looks really smart, and I'm not a health and safety expert, so I can't advise you on what should or shouldn't be in it, but it looks great and it reads well, but I don't know which bits were new.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Westropp. I mean, I would think that the COVID-19 might be the new one, but if I'll pass on to the officer just to give us some clarification on what the significant changes were to the document.
Yeah, it is as Councillor Mosey said in relation to the COVID-19. There were very minor tweaks in other places, but I take the point in terms of perhaps track changes or some colour coding or something like that may have helped. So apologies for that. Thank you.
I just want to kind of reiterate and say that as a policy, it reads well. It's a policy. It's very factual and it's to the point. I'm not an expert in health and safety by any means, but you know, thank you for bringing it to us. Any other comments? No? No. Then I'm happy to endorse the policy and as it is. Thank you. Do we need to second this? I get a bit woolly. Yes, can I have a seconder, please?
I'll second it.
Can we take a vote, please? Thank you. Thank you very much. Agenda item 11. So the work plan for food and health and safety enforcement for 21-22. Councillor Mosley.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. And it's the officer behind me on this one, actually. I got it mixed up. I do apologise. So Christian's here to support on that one. It would ordinarily in the past, in fact, have been Anne-Marie, who has been successfully promoted into a new role, and I wish her every success in that as we move forward. So we bring this, the annual health and safety report to you each year. It gives you an indication of what the team will be doing, what they plan to do, and also what they have been doing. I think the striking thing about the report this year is some of the numbers. Specifically, if you go and look at section 2.2 on page 82 of the document or page 4 of the work plan, and you'll see the infectious diseases investigations, and naturally, because of COVID, they have been up through the roof from an expected investigation of 150 to 779. There have been a huge number of challenges for the team over the last 12 months. Obviously, this report reflects the ambition and the hope that those challenges diminish. I think there's a realistic guide of what we could hope to expect through the year. There's been also through here, you'll notice if you seek out some of the numbers, you'll see that there's been a shift in the way some things happen. So a lot of people are, have started perhaps baking at home and selling and the like, and they still need food safety as part of their work. So there's plenty going on in there. I'll open it up. I think the recommendation is to notice, isn't it? Is that correct? Because the decision to implement it's already been made, but it's really to bring to the committee some of the work that the officers do on the team, and I think it's valuable for you to see that. Thank you.
I'm going to start, if I may. I just want to say again, thank you for bringing this report. I understand, with COVID-19, it's been horrendous, and your kind of direction of work has changed. I just want to say thank you for continuing to support all that. As there's a bit of a backlog, do we kind of have a plan for the kind of the food area and the inspections? I know that we've got a really good kind of reputation within SK of our star ratings and things, but I'm just wondering, are we kind of getting out there now? Are we able to kind of go out and do our kind of checks and inspections?
I believe the team do have a plan. I believe they've been implementing it over the past 12 months as conditions have changed and as guidance has changed, but I'll pass over to Christian to give you the detail.
Yep, thank you, Councillor. The FSA have a recovery plan in place, which we need to follow. That goes through to 2023. We've had a temperature check request from them already just to track progress, and we're in a good place. By the end of this calendar year, we should have been on top of all of the routine visits other than the low risk food premises like sweet shops and corner shops. So we're doing really well in that respect. But yeah, it will take a while to recover properly. But we've got all those figures in place. We know exactly where we're going with that. The only impacts that we could have, I guess, is reactive work, like fatal accidents that might come our way, which again impacts.
Hopefully none of them will come your way, but thank you for that. Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just add my comments to yours of gratitude for the service. No one was expecting that the food hygiene would have had an easy year this year or meet the normal performance in terms of activity or results or whatever, and nobody's going to criticise the officers. In fact, we'd all congratulate the officers on the work they've done in regards to both food hygiene, but also COVID. I was going to say it's probably not the easiest job in the world anyway. Certainly not the most popular. I don't think many restaurant owners are looking forward to the food inspector visit. They might be more pleased when the food inspector leaves because of what they've learned, or maybe just because they're leaving. But so it's a difficult job anyway, and I would think that over the last year it's been a hell of a lot worse. So well done, great work. And also great to see that in one of the tables, can't find it, on page 88, it shows that 85.1% of our food premises are deemed as very good, and another 10% as good. So we appear to be working in the right area. So thanks very much.
Thank you. Any other comments? No, then thank you very much. I'd like to move on. And thank you for bringing that to us. Agenda item 12, our work programme. Any comments from the committee? Yes, Councillor Dukes.
Yeah, thanks. I noticed that Bourne Cycling Festival update is in there as an unscheduled item. You know, if anything is going to happen, you know, I don't know if you heard that, but oh, you put me on. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Bourne Cycling Festival. It's down as an unscheduled item. It really needs to be discussed fairly urgently if we're going to do anything about it. You know, if we are going to have another one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. As it stands now, it's not scheduled. I've had no update, and because it crosses committees, Councillor Dukes, it's always that kind of thing, really. So where it is on ours, you know, I do need to kind of liaise with the other committee, really. So that's a point to kind of hang on to, if that makes sense. There is one that I do want to bring forward, if I may. I'd quite like an update on flooding within kind of the area, if we can kind of schedule that for the next committee. I just feel it's an area we really need to discuss. I just kind of like an update of where we are with that and how we're kind of liaising with other kind of parties and things, really, if I may. Any other comments from the committee? Oh no, silence. So there is something that is coming to the next committee, which is street trading policy and street collection policy. I understand that's coming as well. So we'll include flooding and we'll go from there. So any other issues, please contact me via email. You know where I am. I'm always very receptive for ideas or issues to be discussed. So I think that's where we are. And I haven't got any, moving on to agenda item 13, I haven't got any urgent business. So I just, so I'd like to close the meeting. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you ever so much.